Zoom link again.
I'm ready.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It says we are live, which is great. I have to apologize. We tried to do the Facebook room, and I don't know. I'm not a good technology person. Kate's not a good technology person, so somehow it's kind of messed up. But we are here in Zoom, and I'm just going to check to make sure I can see us, Kate. Do I see us in the group? Yeah, yes, I see us in the group. So we are there. And any of you that are tuning in, we're glad you're here. We're not going to be able to communicate with you the way we thought we could, but that's okay. We'll improve upon this as we do it. But once again, and as always, if you have any questions, please leave them for us, and we'll check in with the group as we're going through all of this. So thank you for joining Kate and I here today. I want to talk a little bit about Tuesdays with Maury, because Kate, I think you're not even familiar with that book, are you?
I am. Of course I am.
You are, you know it, but you don't know the full story though, right?
No, I know the story.
Do
Yeah.
you? Okay, good.
I
Maybe
actually,
thinking of somebody else.
I hadn't read it since 1993. I think it came out in 93. And I did watch the movie again a couple weeks ago just to refresh myself.
Isn't it fantastic?
Wonderful. Yeah, it's
It's,
wonderful. It's
yeah, and
true. So true.
it's so true. And I can honestly say that that is a book that impacted my life. And when I look back on it, it's likely a little bit of a driving force behind part of the reason why I wanted to do the healing for pet loss Facebook group, along with losing Stella. When I was taking my palliative care classes, that was one of the movies that was kind of mandatory for us to watch in the classes, just to get comfortable with death and grieving. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, what Kate and I are talking about, it's about a college professor named Maury, and he shares important life lessons with a former student named Mitch. So Maury and Mitch have a connection to one another. And Maury's asked Mitch to write his life story so that it can be shared with the world. Mitch is a writer, and he wants his story shared with the world before he dies. All of this happens at Maury's house. He's been diagnosed with ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, and he's dying. So one day Maury attends a colleague's funeral, and he becomes depressed that the deceased never got the opportunity to hear all the wonderful things that the people were saying about him. So Maury decides that he wants to hold a living funeral for himself so that he can feel and learn and hear all about the love that the people in his life have for him. And you know what, Kate? Wakes make me really uncomfortable and sad for that reason too. Because how ironic is it that people will do all these, send us flowers and say all these wonderful things about us when we're gone?
Right.
I find that so sad. So he invites Mitch over, and Mitch is a businessman, and he's in a world that's not great, and everything's kind of falling apart on him. So Maury and Mitch together, they're they're kind of recreating goodness and faith that the two of them had possessed during the college years. And Mitch is to write Maury's story. So this happens every Tuesday. So that's kind of why Kate and I are connecting with you guys on Tuesday. And as they're talking about the book and whatnot, Maury is also outlining lessons within the messages that he's giving to Mitch to help him. So there's 14 Tuesdays that they spend together. And there's a quote from Maury's favorite poet, which is W.H. Auden. And the quote is that love is the essence of every person and every relationship. And to live without it is to live with nothing. And that ties in really well with what Kate and I deliver to all of you. In time, our wish is for all of you to see and feel love again. the foundation of both of our Facebook groups, that was a tongue twister, is based on the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model for grief. So, of course, Elizabeth spoke about the 5 stages or emotions of grief that a person experiences when they have a loss. And they are, once again, denial and anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So these 5 stages describe a general process, and every person on earth grieves in their own unique way. So that's why it's really important that as you're working and communicating with people in the Facebook groups, that you're not comparing your grief to theirs, because all of us are going to grieve in our own way. And what's interesting is I know a lot of times when we're having conversations with people, they are reacting to more than just the loss of their pet. So a lot of things can be defined by grief. It can be a divorce, it can be a retirement, a personal injury, or an illness, children leaving home. All of these things, if they're not dealt with at the time, people suppress them, push them down. They don't want to feel them. And then all of a sudden, something happens in their life, and guess what? They are reeling in the grief, and it's more than just the grief over their pet. So, Kate, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'd like you to give a little bit of feedback on anger.
I would love to do that. I do want to talk about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model for a moment, to say that we have the 5 stages. We don't know how long it's going to take us to get through each stage, and we don't know if the stages are going to be mixed up. Sometimes they get mixed up and we jump around. So typically anger is the 2nd stage. And I'm going to do a reading in a little while from Return from Rainbow Bridge, but I was going to do a reading from Only Gone from Your Sight, but the longest chapter in the book is the anger chapter, because anger is such a complex. It's complex for lots of reasons. It's complex during grief, but it's complex by itself, in that how many of us are brought up to know that anger is okay to express? Don't you dare be angry at me.
Right.
You know, it's not a valued communication, and it should be. We should be allowed to express whatever it is we're feeling at any time in our lives. And if we're with the right people, they will let us do that. But a lot of people just don't understand the anger part. And as Kenda said, if we have an incident that made us, a loss incident, or an incident that actually made us angry in the past that we never resolved, when we have a loss of a pet in this example, and we're dealing with the stages of grief, we hit the anger stage, and it can be absolutely magnified because we never dealt with what happened before. So whether it was a loss we never dealt with, or an anger with someone we never dealt with, it's going to impact us. If I could tell just a brief story. I went to a church service many, many years ago, and we were talking about forgiveness. And in the story, we were talking about Leonardo da Vinci, who was painting The Last Supper. Is that right? Did he paint The Last Supper?
Oh my gosh.
I think so.
You're making me want to do a Google search.
This isn't art history, but whoever painted The Last Supper.
He painted a lot of stuff.
I'm not a writer. I'm no art history major. But anyway, the painting was done very easily, except for the fact that the artist was having an argument with his best friend over something serious. So the artist went home. Let's call him Da Vinci.
Sure.
Went home, and he painted all of the faces of everyone at the Last Supper, with the exception of Jesus, and he could not get Jesus's face right, and he kept trying again and trying again and trying again. And then one day, this is many months later, he made up with his friend. He forgave his friend, and his friend forgave him. And he went home that night and painted Jesus's face as it is today on the painting. So that's just an example of how we can get caught up and blocked by anger that's impacting our lives. And it runs through our lives when we don't even know it's running through our lives. We can react to things on television. We can react to things in politics.
Oh my God.
we can react to all kinds of things for unresolved anger. So the moral of the story is to practice forgiveness, but to also process your anger. As Kenda says, we suppress it instead of letting it out. And sometimes it's letting it out means saying something that you need to say to protect yourself or advocate for yourself with someone. And sometimes it means, maybe you don't have that opportunity, or maybe the person that you're angry with is even dead now, to the extent they die, which they don't, we know. But beating a pillow with your hands, or a baseball bat on a padded room, or whatever it is you can find, it's you're going to stay stuck in that anger if you don't express it.
And if you have strong faith, Kate, you could be angry at God. I can remember quite a few times in my life where I was angry with God. I was just, how can you let this happen if you really exist? Especially I'm thinking for myself when I lost my sister and my brother-in-law. They were killed in a automobile accident. A tractor trailer hit them, and I can remember being so angry, Kate, angry with God. Like, how can you be all that you're supposed to be and have this horrible thing happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to get over that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's complicated to be angry at God, because who are we? And
Yeah.
and we feel guilty for our anger, because that's what we were brought up believing, that angry we should feel guilty
Right.
about it. So
Yeah.
we already feel it, and we feel it with God anyway, without the anger
Yeah.
sometimes. So it gets very complicated, and is a very, very heavy part of the grieving process. But there is one positive to the anger stage, and that is anybody who's going through grief knows how much it impacts their ability to function, and how they get fatigued, and how they're tired, and how they have no more, too tired even to cry any more tears. And when you move into the anger stage, it's actually, well, imagine yourself feeling angry right now at whatever you might be angry about. There's a shot of adrenaline that comes into your being when you're angry. And it's actually by design that you are re-energized so that you can continue to move through the phases of grief and the phases of loss into the next stage. So that is the one positive with anger, is that you're fueled with feeling, you're fueled with emotion, you're fueled with the anger that's inside of you that needs to come out of you, is what it is.
And isn't it interesting? And I say this a lot to people who are grieving, that we have been designed to be able to deal with all these emotions. Like you think back many, many years ago, our grandparents, how did they deal with grief when they lost somebody or something that they loved? We are designed when we're born, the day we're born, to be able to deal with all these emotions, correct?
Absolutely. And we talked last week, we talked about the shock, the denial. That's all by design too, because we're not capable of comprehending it all when it first happens. So it's by design, by our creator, that we just let a little of it in, a little at a time. And once we let it in, then we can go through the anger stage and move forward. So it's really a brilliant design.
Yeah, it is.
And the beautiful thing is that we go through this, and it's inevitable to end up in the acceptance. It's inevitable. It just, we don't know how messy it's going to be. It's probably not going to be too smooth. And we don't know how long it's going to take to get through each stage, but we will get to acceptance. It's there waiting for us.
And eventually you come out of anger, right? Like I look back now, and my sister was killed 25 years ago. And I don't know how long I stayed angry for. I stayed angry. I stayed angry for quite a while, Kate, to be honest with you, because I ended up losing my marriage over, not because I was angry. My ex-husband was somebody who thought that I should have moved through the grieving process faster. He didn't like, that I was going to the cemetery and spending elongated time there, and he didn't like that I was walking around crying all the time. So I Yeah, I was an emotional mess. I'm even like, as I talk to you about it now, and everybody in the Facebook group, I can feel
Yeah.
the emotions bubbling up inside of
You
me.
haven't quite resolved it.
You know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You
So
wouldn't be doing that.
what do you say to somebody like me who, I mean, it's not something I think about every day. I'm thinking about it now because we're discussing it.
Yeah. Well, it's not, I'm not telling you you did anything wrong. But one of the important things with grief is if you've had a major loss, and it might be a job, and it might be a death, and it might be a divorce, that you don't make any major changes for at least a year after. You don't move, you don't normally get divorced. So that's one feature that you need to consider. And the other thing is that, and of course, men and women can handle things differently as well. So sometimes it's really hard for a man to deal with a woman who's crying and they don't know what to say. Even at best, they don't know what to say. So everybody's different that way. Also, the thing with anger is that it's very easy to be angry with those people when they don't give you what you need and when they don't understand. And then you can say all kinds of things about how awful they are, but really it's fueled by your anger as well. So be careful not to cut off ties with someone. Maybe you've been friends forever with someone, and we've had this with people in our group. I've had some private messages from people whose girlfriends will call them up and take them out to lunch in the days before the pandemic. You go out to lunch and the well-intended girlfriend will say, you know, I'm really concerned about you. You've been grieving a long time now, and don't you think it's time to get over it? And those are the last words you want to hear when you're grieving. But you also don't end a 30-year relationship because they said that to you. And it's really easy to just cut the ties and burn the bridges when you're that angry, just in a state of anger. So it's just really important to, and Kenda would tell you how to breathe and how to meditate, but try to pull yourself back in and not get unraveled by it, and try to get back to a centered place before you make any major moves or decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's moving from what we call as an unresourceful state, because anger is unresourceful, and moving into a more resourceful state where, like you said, Kate, where you can be at least, at the very least, grounded, you know, and thus the importance of having Facebook groups where you can go in and you can talk about, you know, my sister really cheesed me off today, or my best friend, or how do you guys relate to this? A place where you can talk about it and get validation for it, where you could talk to, you were blue in the face to your best girlfriend.
Yeah.
If she's not comfortable talking about, you know, what you're going through, she's never going to be comfortable talking about it, and then you're wasting your energy trying to get her to understand something that she's just not capable of understanding.
That's true. Yep.
And it doesn't make her a bad person. It just, you know, we have to remember that, and I think that's so important, Kate, is, you know, we all come from different backgrounds, and the way you were brought up and taught about death and how to relate to it is probably very different from the way I was brought up and taught how to relate to grief and death. And our parents were both brought up differently. So we don't know what another person knows on how you should be acting
No.
when it comes to this kind of thing, right?
And we don't know. We don't know what they know, and we don't know what their comfort zone is, because I know my whole life, even when I was a child and our family dog died, I've never ever been uncomfortable with death ever. I've always had faith, and I've always had the faith that whatever's coming is a good thing. That well, I'm Irish, so you know we celebrate it at funerals and weep it when someone has to come into this world. But no.
Yeah, it's the anger state is a really good one to discuss, and it's one that I think more people that can understand, just, you know, that it's not a great place to be, and to give kindness and consideration to the people around us, because we're not in control at that point.
And we get mad at that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's the whole lack of control. I would love to hear you read.
Okay. I want to say something that just came into my
Yeah,
mind.
please do.
Who is the only one we're not angry with in this whole scenario? Who is the one?
Our pet.
I have never heard anyone say they're angry with their pet for leaving. I've
Yeah.
heard them say that about people who have
Yeah.
left, but I've never heard them say that about their pet.
That's interesting. Just when you said that, Kate, I haven't either. And
Yeah.
and you're right about the people thing. Man, oh man, can we get angry at
How could he leave me? How could she leave me?
right.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder why that is.
I wonder if everybody who's listening today agrees with
Yeah.
that. If they've had anger.
I have Denise on here, and she says it was Da Vinci. So
Oh, thank you.
you know your art history, girl. And Deb's on there saying hello to us. And Deb says, yes, I was very angry. Sorry, I don't mean to look rude, guys. The way this is, I have to multitask. So Deb says, yes, I was very angry with God. How could he let such a precious animal have such a tragic accident that led to death? I'm still angry and at myself. If I had let her into the barn with me when she wanted in, I know she would still be here. Deb lost her horse.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So it takes a while to not have those feelings anymore. And I don't know if you ever not have them, or if you just learn to accept them, right?
one of the things that we do is we replay those final events over and over and over, and it's almost like we keep that event alive by replaying it. And it takes quite a strong training of your mind to not keep doing that. But I had to do it with Jack. We had some really horrific final moments, and I'd start feeling better, and then I'd go right back to that moment, and I would weep and I would cry, and I'd say, why, oh why? And I knew that he didn't want me to remember him in that way, in that moment. And in my efforts to honor him, that was my incentive to stop replaying that part and to start. And as soon as I stopped replaying it, I was able to see the brighter side of things. And that was the beginning of the miracle that became Jack McGafgan. But it's like when you're replaying those things in your mind, it's like if you're on a radio station, change the channel into something that feels better, a song that plays better than that one.
Absolutely. And we're not meant as a species to be angry. You know, I don't want to talk about politics. I'm not a good politic person. And I always tell people I'm Canadian, so I can't get involved in your politics.
Lucky.
But there's just, when you look at the people right now with the politics that are angry, or even something as simple as should we wear a face mask out in public, and the people going, well, I'm not wearing one and you can't make me, and then other people going, well, how dare you not wear one? My relative is dead now because of people like you. There's just, our world right now is just spinning.
It is.
So much in anger that it frightens me, Kate. It frightens me. I'm almost very happy to be. I'm not an introvert, I'm an extrovert, but I don't miss being with people all that much right now, just because of the anger in the world.
Well, you introduced me to Richard Brendan, and I was on his radio show, and we were just having a conversation like this, and it was rolling right along, and we were talking about anger and grief, and I said something, and something clicked in his head, and he said, maybe that's what's going on with our world today, that we've lost. It's a loss of a way of living in America, a loss of many, many things. Everything has changed. And maybe the anger that we're all feeling that's out of proportion is because we're grieving the way we used to be. And it made
Excellent.
it was an epiphany, and we both agreed he was probably very right about that.
Excellent point, Kate. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact that we don't have control over anything right now, and we have to trust in something that we can't see, right?
Yep. And it takes us back to our roots, and some of us are having temper tantrums.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Absolutely. So as I said, I'm Canadian, so I don't get involved in the politics, and I'm one of the odd people. I don't know if it's odd or not, but I wear my mask out in public, and I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't want any problems. So that's just what I do.
Well,
It's
and there's people that are self-centered and there's people that are other-centered, and the self-centered ones are always going to struggle with these things.
yeah. Can you share with us some of your beautiful writing?
Yep. Well, I've got Return from Rainbow Bridge here. It's book
Okay.
number 3 in the trilogy.
I
And
can't
the
point to it because I'm going to mess it up, but it's like right behind my head.
got it. You got it. And the anger, it's a chapter on anger. The book is actually a story, but I did put a chapter in here because anger is such a big deal. And so it's told as part of the story. The numbness and denial were behind her. It was progress, but she didn't think it was. She was starting to feel all of her feelings. As the shock of grief began to wear off, the first feeling that arose inside of her was anger. It's just not fair. He was only 8. She thought she'd maybe have me in her life until 12 or maybe 13, maybe more. She thought that she loved me so much that love itself would keep me alive. The fact is that it has, but not in the way she was thinking. But we ate the best food. We walked twice a day. This is the stage when resentment and bitterness can rear their ugly heads. We always lived our life in love. We did everything right. Maybe the veterinarian did something wrong. It's all by design. The ordinary human mind has a natural tendency to go to the anger as a matter of course and seek out someone to blame, anyone. It takes a lot of energy to grieve. Anger is the body's way to start energizing. The fire of anger is power, and power makes you feel strong again. It isn't pleasant, but it feels so much better after feeling so weak and vulnerable and helpless for so long. I can no longer leave the room when she gets angry. I cannot comfort her like I always could before, but I have learned that this too would pass and that she would find her own way. Alas, there was no one to hold liable for her loss. Her radar mind could not find a place to put the blame. It was just life. It was just death. Where to point the finger? There was nowhere to put her anger. There was no one to blame. Why the need to feel guilt and place blame? Do you call me guilty too? Do you feel that I failed you because I had to leave you? One of the most important things I came to teach you is that you are not in control. Humans think they can control everything when it's all out of their hands. She says that I left too soon, but I left at the perfect time for me. She felt she had been swindled out of the 3, 4, 5 or more years she had planned on sharing with me. The biggest disappointments in life come from having expectations that life will be a certain way and then finding out it isn't. She knew all along that she'd outlive me, for humans usually do, yet she was acting as if she thought I would live on earth with her forever. Why, she would spurt, why? Why did you have to leave me so soon? You seem to forget, this is a Jack speaking directly to me now.
Mhm.
You seem to forget that the sun must set. You know perfectly well that I would not be with you long enough. Still, you weep and you cry and you ask God why, as if it were some kind of surprise. Why? Because love changes everything. Love's the surprise.
Whew. You got me crying, girl.
Oh,
That Jack is an amazing boy.
he's a good boy.
He's a good boy. He's a smart boy. I for those of you that are maybe new to all of this, Kate is an author, a fabulous author, and when I read Jack's book, and it was, I don't know, how long have we been friends for now? Probably a little over a year. I can just remember so many pieces fell into place for me. And I thought I had it all together, Kate. I truly thought I had it all together. But when I read Reflections, I don't know, just so much more about me losing Stella made sense. And I'm still incredibly, I don't know how you did it. You lost Jack, you lost your father, and how long after that did you start writing?
6 months to the day Jack died.
I don't know how I don't know. Like you said, it's a miracle, right? It's something that happened that you probably can't even explain.
I was writing another book at the time. I wasn't going to write anything like this.
And
And
you
it,
shifted gears.
huh?
You shifted gears.
I didn't know I shifted gears, but I've written every day of my life for the most part since I was about 4. And when Jack passed and my dad passed, I went through a very long recovery period. And because my dad's passing, and I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but it gets very complicated when one dies and then 24 hours later, someone else very special dies.
Oh
And,
my
and
God.
it was neither one of them had you planned on. So,
No.
um, my dad actually interrupted Jack. I couldn't continue grieving for Jack until I grieved for my dad, and then I came back and grieved for Jack. So I didn't pick up a pen or a pencil or a keyboard to write anything creative in for 6 months. And then one night I have a dream journal that I keep by my bed, and I hadn't written in that either because I wasn't sleeping, so I wasn't dreaming.
Right.
Anyway, I picked that up and I wrote 12 pages. I've still got those 12 pages, but I wrote it from his point of view, speaking to me about my grief, how he saw me grieving and how I needed to grieve a little differently.
Yeah.
And the next morning I woke up and I pulled out that what I'd written and I said, wow, what am I going to do with this? And that was the beginning of book
That
1.
was the beginning. And if you have not read any of these books, I can't emphasize enough how they will change your life. They really will. The sister group to Healing Solutions for Pet Loss is what it. I say it wrong all the time. Um,
Healing pet loss, heart to heart.
healing pet loss, heart to heart. That's the sister group. And when you go in there, Kate will often talk a lot about things that have happened with her grief journey. I talk about kind of my grief journey in this group, and Kate talks about her grief journey in the sister group. And Jack has his own Facebook group, and often I will share posts from Jack to our group because he has the most incredible messages. I find, Kate, just things that you need to stop and you need to reflect on for a moment because, man, oh man, grief it's a roller coaster, but sometimes it can get out of control, and you have to learn how to pull yourself back into control, right?
And it's like a roller coaster. You feel like it's out of control and you're screaming because you're afraid for your life, but it's really just a ride, and you're not gonna be thrown off the tracks. You're gonna arrive safe
As
and
much
sound.
as it feels like it, right?
No, that's right. It does feel like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as much as it feels like it. I'm just going to check in with the group here and see if anybody has any questions for us. If you guys have any questions, Deb said is that she was so blessed to have been her mama for 28 years. That's an incredible age for a horse, Deb. I used to raise horses as well, and my gelding, gosh, I'm doing like a visual reconstruct here with my eyes, trying to think how old he was when he died. He was like mid 30s, so 28. Wow. um, Debbie says to us, I've never had anger toward one of my pets for leaving. I wonder if it's because we look at their will as being pure, that they would never leave us on their own violation. That's good. That's good, Debbie. Yeah, I wonder about that as well. I want to share a little something with the group that Kate and I have talked about for some time, and I think it's time that we put it into fruition because we've been discussing it for a while. Kate and I are going to be opening up a 8-week grief loss group. support group for all of you. It's really difficult to engage all of you at this time, and we want to be able to talk to you. We want to be able to support you. We want to be able to help you, and we're going to do what we're good at, and that's helping people. We're both helpers. So we've put a start date on it, which is September 1st, which happens to be a Tuesday. So it falls right along with Tuesdays with Maury. It's going to be something we have to decide on what time we'll run it, Kate, and that's something you and I can discuss later on. But this is going to be for anybody in either one of our groups to join. Probably we'll be using the Zoom platform. So you'll have to get a Zoom account, but I can help you with all of, the technology parts of the puzzle, putting that together. But we're going to go on there. You're going to meet with us for 8 weeks. We're going to be discussing grief. We're going to be discussing your story. You're going to get an opportunity to tell your story. Kate is going to teach us through Jack about some of the healing resources that we need to tap into. And at the end of our talk, I'm going to be teaching some mind modalities that we can use to take us out of unresourceful states, putting us into a more resourceful one where we're grounded, because we have to go to work. We have to deal with people in our community. We have to deal with our boss, our kids, whoever. So there's times when the tears are not going to be appropriate. There's going to be times when people aren't going to understand, and you really need to pull yourself together. So there are techniques that you can use that I'm going to be teaching that can help ground you, pull you back in so that you can be that person that you need to be at that moment. We haven't decided on the price yet, but it's going to be very, very economical. And we'll be releasing more details on that in the next couple of weeks. So definitely watch this space for some more details. Kate, tell me about what's going on with you. You have written another book, which is a little bit different than the trilogies that you've already written with Jack, right?
Yeah, it's a lot different. It's a 20-year-old. It's a story that happened 20 years ago that I brought to the forefront now. My biggest issue right now is the cover. I started out, the cover's behind you. I see the original cover, but I thought I was told that I really needed people on the front of it because it's a romance story, but I put the people on the front of it. I paid a cover designer to do it professionally and put people on the front of it. And then people didn't like the people on the front of it.
Oh, good gracious.
Just this morning, do you know what I put on the front of it? I think it's going to work. It's a coyote.
Nice.
The cutest coyote you ever saw on the front of the book. I think it'll do better than the people. So there's a lot of, go ahead.
That's interesting to me, that a cover, that people will literally judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Wow.
But the couple on the front of it made it look like just a real solid romance, and it's so much more than a romance. It's got a lot of history in it. It's got a lot about the cultures, and it's got a lot about Arizona. So I don't want somebody who just wants a love story to pick it up and be disappointed that it had all that stuff in it.
Oh,
So there's a lot to writing a book and then marketing it properly. I've learned the hard way how far I've come. The first book, which is to the upper left as we're looking at your background, the first book, I didn't even have Jack on the cover of it. I didn't know how important it was to have him on there. So I changed that cover. It took me about 2 years to change it, but he deserves to be on his own book.
Absolutely. He's got his own Facebook page.
And I'll tell you, that page is really fun because I get to be Jack when I answer people, and I can just love them and love them and love them and love them.
And people get confused over that, right? Because they think Jack, they're not sure who Jack is, right?
Yeah, I have people write me and they say you and your husband have been so helpful to us.
No. Seriously?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Jack is way wiser than than a husband can be. I'm sorry.
You still got that little thing of anger in there.
I know. I was going to say, no offense to anybody who has a wonderful husband, and I'm sure there are some wonderful husbands out there, but
think about your dog though now, and then who would you pick?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. How oh, I forgot. It was something about Jack. Ah, crap. I can't remember what it was.
There's people on the Heart to Heart group that still think he's the guy that runs the group. Or hi, Mr. McAfgan. The message, hi, dear Mr. McAfgan.
Oh my gosh. You need a little dog emoji that you can send back to them saying, "Hey, this is Jack."
I know.
That's cute, Kate. I'm just seeing if anybody has any questions for us. Debbie says that will be wonderful. Thank you for doing that for us, Debbie. I hope you will join us. Debbie says I'm crying too. That was beautiful. Honey was 34 when I lost her. I didn't know that, Deb. Okay, fantastic. And Kate, some of the things that we'll be doing during the 8-week class is you're going to teach the participants a little bit about the importance of journaling, right?
Some forms of journaling. I know that I have a few tricks up my sleeve, but one of the things that's really hard for people, and it's really important, and I learned it by doing it myself, but it wasn't an assignment, it just came to me. Or was it an assignment? Is to look at yourself. We all have guilt. We all have guilt over something because that's just a human nature. But what was I going to say?
Some people about, like I said, about teaching people about the importance of journaling.
Yes. To write a letter to you, a love letter to yourself from your pet's point of view. And I've asked my group to do that. I haven't asked in a long time, but maybe 1 out of 25 people are able to do that. It's so much easier to write it to your pet from your point of view, but it's so much more healing to write it from your pet's point of view to you. And people have a real hard time with that. And I didn't seem to have trouble with it because I wrote 3 trilogies with it. But
yeah,
it's something you could even try now and just see how it feels. And then when you go back and read it, it's very powerful. You won't have guilt anymore after you do that. You'll know how much you were loved and appreciated.
That is beautiful. So you'll be teaching a little bit more about that and the importance of that in our 8-week class, which I like that. And I'm thinking how therapeutic that would be. And so many people are locked in the grief, the would have, could have, should have,
Yeah. It's a whole new perspective when you can look at it differently. It gives you a whole new perspective.
I like that, Kate. I like that, Kate. Well, I'm gonna check in and see if there's any questions for everybody. I think we've covered off everything. This may have been too early of a time slot, Kate. I think the people who are working, it is so hard to know what the right time is because we've got people from all over the world on the groups, but we'll figure out the right time slot. But pardon me?
Maybe we can take a poll on our groups.
Yeah. I'd like to do that. I'd like to keep it at Tuesdays because I know you're still involved with hospice work and I'm still seeing clients. So Tuesday's kind of a good day to where it's relatively quiet. Right. Next week we're going to be talking about bargaining, and we will probably do that in the Heart to Heart group. And because we like to switch them back and forth and have people, give people the opportunity to watch them both, but they're recorded, so you'll get to see it no matter what. So if you couldn't partake in this live session and you're watching this after, please leave any comments, any questions that you may have. I will be giving some information about the September 1st launch of the Pet Loss Grief Group that Kate and I will be running. And as I said, we're going to have a special introductory price for the people who are members right now, and that'll be good for the 8 weeks. So we hope some of our wonderful friends can join us. And I look forward to seeing faces and being able to communicate with people, because
Right.
as an extrovert, that part is really hard for me to not be experiencing.
And as an introvert, it would be lovely to see people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hear their voices, right, Kate?
Voices, have that interaction. That interaction two-way is so important.
Absolutely. And for us, for you guys to be able to ask questions directly to us and for us to be able to address them rather than, it almost feels like old technology, just doing it. You type something and somebody types something back. So we look forward to changing things up and getting to know each and every one of you a little bit better. So we thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Kate. What's the weather there? How hot is it?
It's, I think, 106 or 7 today. I'm ready for fall.
Does your fall cool down a lot?
It cools down. We'd probably be into the 60s and 70s through the fall, and then we're down in the 40s in the winter. Sometimes it goes down in the teens just for a couple nights, but
okay.
Yeah.
We have that now. I walk Stelly twice a day, and in the mornings, like this morning, I think it was 67 degrees. And last night when I was walking her, it was like I could have had a jacket on. It was cool.
I love that.
Yeah. So and you're starting to notice that the leaves off the trees are starting to, you're noticing more leaves on the ground,
No,
so
I don't see them. You are, though. I'm not seeing those yet.
You're not yet, eh? Yeah. So I think
our summer lasts until probably the end of September, so we won't see leaves fall, turn color until October.
Nice. Well, good for you. Enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the warm weather. So Kate and I are going to sign off for now. Kate, as always, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to have you here with me, and so grateful for you. We're grateful for each and every one of you guys for tuning in and listening to us chat.
They make it all the difference. Our visitors.
Absolutely. So we will talk to you guys again next Tuesday. We'll be in the Heart to Heart group, and we'll be talking about bargaining. So everybody have a good week. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions, don't be afraid to reach out to either Kate or I. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.